Welcome. This will be my review of the 1985 arcade game Savage Bees, the English American version, not the Japanese one. It is available through the Capcom Arcade Stadium. I got the complete pack. I think it's second stadium, but I forget. And the review is going to have zero spoilers, not that there's anything you really could spoil here. It is rated E for everyone, so will this video be. And yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed my time with this game. So I am going to try not to restate what I said in the first chunk of my video on Space Harrier 2, which is where I go over my general thoughts on arcade and arcade style games. And so right, I play this on PC through Steam. And yeah, basically in this you are piloting this flying craft that the ship that is fighting really big, I think, robotic insects. We're talking bees, wasps, just various kinds. And yeah, I mean, I have previously mentioned that there was a time where if you thought of something that you figured kids would probably spend money playing, yeah, you could make it into a game, and this is another example of that. Like, because, you know, lots of, you know, young guys and children want to fly a spaceship and kill robotic bugs. So you don't really need much more than that. And it is a top-down shooter where, over the course of it, the camera will, gradually, or the background rather, will gradually move. And essentially it's not necessarily going to move every second, and sometimes you are eager for it to move, other times not so much. And one of the things that works so well here is the fact that it is literally impossible to find even one spot on the entire screen where you will always be safe. Like, a lot of games like this, it's one of the first things you learn is don't be all the way at the top of the screen, because that's where a bunch of the enemies are going to show up. So the closer you are to the top of the screen, the more likely one of them will crash right into you and take you out. One hit takes you out, and some of the enemies that's also the case, but some of them not so much. And thus you might find yourself thinking, well, the bottom must be safe, but sometimes enemies will come from down there as well, and the same goes for the sides. And no, the middle is not completely safe either, because you can be surrounded if you are too close to the middle and you're not taking out enough of the enemies, So, yeah, it is very challenging. You constantly have to be on your toes like that. And I think that does get us nicely to... So basically, there is only the one weapon, and if you pick up power-ups, it can be upgraded, but it does not, like, significantly change. I mean, I would say probably the game this most reminded me of, other than, like, a 2D version of Space Harrier 2, was something like Raptor Call of the Shadows. Now, I'm obviously not saying that this should have been as advanced as that is compared to this, because of the, that one was released, I forget how many years later, but I believe that one was like a 90s game, so that's obviously, technology had improved. I'm also not entirely sure if that one was ever an arcade game. I only played it on PC, yeah, certainly. But the, yeah, in that one, there's there's like a dozen something different weapons. In this, there's just the one. Also, there's also a power-up kind of thing that will turn enemies on screen into fruit, which if you pick up will give extra points, which I don't know how that's supposed to work, but it's memorable, certainly. Other than that, I think it's when you do especially well, every so often you will be granted a smart bomb. And these can be good to hang on to because it's actually a case of you can be like the carry capacity is quite impressive, and yeah, basically the yeah, so it's not a surprise that they can do damage, sometimes entirely take out enemies near you. But the cool thing is they can also eliminate enemy fire on screen, which is really good because often the enemy fire is the main thing deciding where you're positioning yourself, including whether or not you can stay right in front of something that takes a bunch of shots to take out. And I suppose that pretty much... Yeah, so the amount of time it takes to complete is pretty decent for one of these. I'm not going to give it away exactly. And yeah, so the controls, as best as I've been able to tell, you cannot change the controls in this one through the emulation. So it is WASD for movement, spacebar for smart bomb, and J to fire. Now, mostly I don't mind that. I wish I could set the fire key to something else because, and I know I'm unusual in this, but when I use, the keyboard's arrow, WASD or the arrow keys to move my character, I always use my right hand for that. And my left hand is usually on the mouse for games like that. And in this one, I have to kind of awkwardly cross my arms. I have tried using my left hand on WASD and arrow keys. Does not work. Just doesn't agree with me at all. Anyway, yeah, so it is one of those games where you don't have to play it for terribly long before you've seen basically what it has to offer. Like, after that, it'll just get tougher until the end, but, it's an arcade game. It's a very simple setup. The enemy design is quite good. I do agree with, I saw some, I think it was on Steam, pointing out the bosses are kind of bland compared to, but yeah, so I've mentioned most of them. There's also these floating skulls with, they're like gray with glowing red eyes. It's pretty gnarly. Not so intense that a 7-year-old can't handle it, but nothing either. And the great thing about the enemies, and part of why this challenges so much, is that while they tend to be pretty clearly programmed, you do have to memorize their behavior. Some of them have specific movement patterns that they just follow regardless of anything else. Some of them, no, yeah, that's self-explanatory. Some of them will try to move towards you regardless of where you are, and the speed with which they move is also different from enemy to enemy, to types, I mean. So yeah, the first chunk of playing this, you are just getting a handle on how many shots do I have to fire at this to take it out? How does it move, and does that ever change? That sort of thing. I can imagine this thing 8 quarters back in the day. And let's see. So the yeah, um the graphics are good for the time, you know, there's a good use of color. It doesn't really, you know, it's one of those that understands that you can actually, like, obviously, you know, because the tech, there was a limitation on how many colors they could use, but it uses the ones that it can. And the sound design is good. There's a nice kind of weight to shots, explosions, and such. It feels like something actually happened whenever something blows up, even though it's just computer graphics, you know. The music is also quite good. I was impressed that it did not get annoying despite how much time you spend listening to it if you play all the way through it. And it also just, you know, keeps up the energy. Not that it needed to, but I appreciate the effort. And let's see, I suppose, so I've already mentioned that it's challenging. It is also quite fun. It's very satisfying being able to take out the enemy ships in the game, and it is also one of those where sometimes if you don't take out the boss on the first pass, because there's like, you don't see the time limit, but some of them there is a time limit. It'll show some more, it'll throw some more enemies at you, and then you have to defeat the boss again, but this time possibly from the start of that fight. So that's, yeah. And I suppose, yeah, so replayability essentially boils down to chasing a high score, and obviously whether or not that's enough for you depends on who you are. I would definitely say this, so this is one of the ones where you have to buy these separately. You know, the last one I did off this collection, Sun, just comes with the main. I think that's actually the only one that comes with, if you only get that regular one. So I got the complete pack, complete collection, whatever it's called, on like ridiculous discounts, like 90 some percent, you know. I would have been frustrated if I had not gotten this very heavily discounted, you know. And I did not run into any bugs or glitches. I just realized I forgot to mention, so this one does have a rewind function, and there are 32 save slots, but that is for everything in the complete collection, you know. And yeah, it does a good job with the setting. You know, it's basically like you're flying over stuff, you know, and sometimes it's just regular ground, and there's also other kinds, but yeah, you know, it felt like I was moving through an area, and they do a good job on that. Like, it felt like, you know, like I don't know, it felt like there were actually people, I don't know, working there, maybe not, but like that this was a place where hypothetically someone could be working or living, that sort of thing. And yeah, I suppose that does cover everything. So yeah, I I've been giving out a lot of 8 ratings recently, and this one, I mean, ultimately, it is basically, it's the kind of bland boss design, as well as the fact that, you know, I mean, yeah, there are upgrades to your attack, but it doesn't change in like a really fun, significant way, really. Because of that, I rate this 7 robotic, I believe, bugs that are like the size of your ship and larger, fought by the player out of 10.